And they can be a problem. Oh, dude, did you make that?
Yes.
Put,
Yeah,
hey, put,
it's plaster of Paris.
I know what it is. So
Yeah.
you found that print.
No. My friend and I were like, we're
Oh,
gonna make a
it's just a
footprint.
fake print that you made to
Yeah,
have in the house. Okay, I got you. Okay.
but I'm into it.
All right,
I
now
do
you got
believe.
it. I'm on the fence with you now.
I was wondering how you pronounce her last name because I was kind of like, I don't know how to. I have no idea how to say that.
Dude, I said my last name incorrectly my whole life until I went to Greece.
Okay.
And so I grew up saying Zicopoulos. All right. And then my father, he moved back to Greece in the 90s in the house he was born in. It's a great story, that whole how his family came here and everything else. But I'm there and everybody's saying, you can say Zicopoulos or Zicopoulos.
Okay.
But it's all all long vowels. But then if you're a female, you drop the S off the end.
Okay.
So if your name, like my sister is Aileen, right? So if she was in Greece, her name would be Aileen Zicopoulos. But I would be Michalis Zicopoulos.
Interesting. Okay.
So
All right.
yeah. So I've
Well,
always pronounced it Zicopoulos ever since I came back. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, why are we saying this wrong? He says, your mother could never get it right. She just couldn't get it right. So there was a lot of problems with my mom.
Yeah.
Apparently that was just tip of the iceberg.
Well, that's funny. So you already completed one of my questions, which was, have you ever been to Greece?
Yeah, a bunch of times, but not till I was in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's the story on why you started YouTube?
Well, like a lot of people, YouTube was out there. I think my first video might have been around 2010 or something. I forget, but I didn't do anything with it. I didn't know what to do with it. I don't even remember what I posted. Excuse me. I think my first video might have been an interview that I was friends with this guy who was a drummer from the band Poison, Ricky Rocket.
Okay.
And so we used to ride motorcycles together, and Ricky wanted to do a documentary on the bikes we were riding. They're called Cafe Racers. And he interviewed me, and then he gave me that. And that might have been the first thing I ever posted up, but I never did anything with it. And then over the years, like some motorcycle trip stuff, like if you look at, I guess you can go to the channel and go to you can click on the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so horrible with this, man. But like your first videos, and then you could see what I was posting. There was nothing there, and then the country was so messed up, in my opinion. Like politically and whatnot. And that was always in my head. In 2015, I met a conservative street artist here. He goes by Sabo, and he's pretty well known. If you don't know who he is, you might want to look it up. He does some pretty wild art, and so we became friends. He was also in the Marines at the same time period I was in. We're roughly the same age. And so he asked me to help him, and we would change billboards around. Mm-hmm. So we changed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood to Once Upon a Time in Pedowood. I can send you images of this if you want. You can put them in on your, if you want to.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then I started realizing that it's important to have a voice about things. So I started talking to things. And really, the big thing that happened for me that made me start doing YouTube was just driving in LA traffic one day, and just the dumb stuff I see. I got to keep it clean on the roads. And I went and I think I did a whole lesson on, I don't know if it was the passing lane or how to make a left-hand turn, whatever it was. Oh, maybe it was a four-way stop sign. I do these things all the time. It's not so dissimilar from your content. And it was like a little bit of a rant, though. And I thought that was good. It made me feel good. And then I just started. Now, those got no traction whatsoever. But once I started doing the YouTube stuff, the Astrovan related content, then I started getting numbers. And then that's how things started to grow. And then, I mean, we asked each other. You've asked me if I watched your videos, and I've watched quite a few of them. It's easier to watch yours. There's not as many there. I'm prolific. But have you watched my stuff? Like, what have you watched?
I watched a lot of your stuff. The first one I saw was that guy in Britain was kind of having an argument with some Chinese folks or something about being in his video because they walked by in the background.
Oh yeah, that video did good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I seen your camping ones you did a little while ago. That was kind of neat. Still wanted to see a Sasquatch, but let's see.
That's a crazy story, man.
Some of your van stuff. So, like the one you did the other day, you were fixing something. Mirror. If you could see a Sasquatch again, would you?
Yeah, because I feel like I understand it better now. It's a scary thing. Like you have to. This is part of life, man. Forget about Sasquatch for a minute, but being able to control your fear of anything is important. And I'm nervous about it. I want to believe that they really don't want to have anything to do with us for the most part. But at the same time, I've put so much effort into studying it now that I understand what it is, that I know that they also like interacting with humans in a way. Like they're very curious about us, so they watch us. But they're scared of us at the same time, which makes sense. There's a lot of, you have to think of them as humans. That's basically, they're just big, giant, hairy humans. That's kind of what they are. They got their own language. They live their lives. I don't know. Obviously they don't have the type of social structure we have as far as they don't need a friggin' marriage license or something, but they couple up and they have babies and they raise them and they take them out. And so we're dangerous to them. We're the ones that have firearms and everything, but they are so powerful they can literally twist your head off. You know what I mean? Like rip your arm out of your socket, just out of your body, and do whatever. You wouldn't want to encounter one of those when it's angry. So that is the key. There's a lot of people that interact with them as far as leaving things out. And then like getting messages in a weird way where they'll come and they'll rearrange things, or they'll leave them gifts like food or something. Then they'll leave you something like a pretty rock or something, or feathers or whatever. There's people interacting with these things. Then there's people that live where their homes are butted up against forests, or they have a lot of property. And these things are known to come to windows and gaze into the windows and watch television. And then some of these are old people living alone, and they leave food out for them and everything. So it's wild. My experience was just out in the woods, and did you watch the video?
I did. I don't think we should get into it because I want people to go to your video for it. But
that's fine.
Yeah. I wouldn't suggest ever leaving food out there because I feel like I've heard that if for whatever reason you quit, they'll throw a fit. Yeah.
Oh, so you're into this. I love it. So that's the thing. Yes, they'll get used to it just like any other person or animal would. And they can be a problem. Oh, dude, did you make that?
Yes. It's plaster of Paris.
I know what it is. Yeah. So you found that print?
No. My friend and I were like, we're gonna. Oh,
it's just a fake print that you made to have in the house. Okay, I got you. Okay.
But I'm into it.
All right, now I'm on the fence with you now.
I believe they're real. That was back when I was a kid, and I was like, let's fake something.
Well, I want to tell you before we get too deep into this, I'm proud of you because I respect anybody that chooses to genuinely be themselves and put it out there on YouTube. And that's absolutely what you're doing. You're not trying to fake anything, at least doesn't seem to me, obviously. Because you're kooky with the way your demeanor, but I like that. Yeah. And I think that genuineness is going to win out over everything. I think all the Hollywood produced stuff and all the fake stuff and people pretending to be something they're not, obviously they get a ton of views. But there's like a little backlash to that. And there's a lot of people out there that want what they would consider quality content where they just feel comfortable with the people. Because that's the kind of comments I get all the time is they feel like they're just having a conversation with me hanging out. And that's what you want.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
That's part of why I wanted to do
that orange knife. You didn't like the shoot?
The orange
Oh, cool.
knife?
So that orange knife, you hated the sheath.
Yeah, it's all right.
Well, I had an idea for you.
Oh, okay. What is it?
So on the way that clip comes behind the handle and wraps back down,
Yeah.
trim it off at the bend, then come just above where the knife goes into the sheath, and then shape it round, then drill a hole through that. And now you can put a piece of leather on that. You could use a Chicago screw or something.
Good idea.
Bend back and forth. You can put that over your belt. You can put a snap on it, whatever, and you make it. And if that breaks or falls apart later, you can do what you wanted to do anyhow, and just make a leather sheath for it. Yeah. But that retention system with that plastic is pretty nice.
It is pretty nice. I like that part. Yeah. And it's a durable. The plastic's pretty durable. It's not junk. Okay. I'm sure you have a whole bunch of hobbies, but I want to hear some of them.
Too many.
Too many.
I've been living alone since I was a kid, so you have to do something with your mind, and I like learning how to do stuff. So I mean, I don't even know what I could tell you. I mean, it's been everything. It's mainly because you have to figure out how to do things on your own when you don't have a lot of money. So, like, if you want something, you want a version of it, you have to create it, and then you have to service it yourself. So that's how things kind of started. But I just like being creative and working with my hands. So anything. I mean, I just recently last year taught myself how to saddle stitch finally. So I was making some really cool leather bands. And here, the crazy thing, man, is I put myself into something to the point where I get really good at it, proficient at it, make it look good, and then I can make really good money on it. So I'm really an artist, craftsman. That's what I do for a living. That's how I survive. So I just have that. So anything that allows me to, I don't know, man. Yeah. I just have to keep my mind constantly active too. So it's a problem.
Yeah, I'm like that too.
If you want to be specific about it, I could talk about something because I have hobbies that it's a ridiculous thing.
Well, let's pick like your 3 favorite or something.
Well, right now it's YouTube's been a hobby, because of that. And the channel is, in the beginning, you get this weird criticism from people where they want you to stay in a lane, pick one thing that you do, and I refuse to do that. And now I feel like my choice has helped me, and it's helped me in my life because it allows me to put anything I'm interested in, any hobby I'm into, on the channel. So now it's diverse. So what I've been able to do is expose my subscribers to all this different stuff, and you'll see it in the comments where they thank you for it. But they wouldn't have no idea about this. So you're exposing I see the internet and the YouTube and everything as a way for us collectively as humans to have like a human consciousness over the internet, which is going to tie us all together. We're going to be exposed to more information free of the filter that media and entertainment has been using to control us with BS all these years. So as far as the hobby aspect of it, like my favorites lately have been the watch thing. Like I got way too deep into the watch thing. Don't do it. Stay away. It can take over your life and spend way too much money on it. But I love making the videos on the watches and learning the history of it. So I like that. The knives, the survival stuff, that's always been a part of my life. The van, obviously, and turning that into a crazy 4x4 is a thing, but I also like clothing, vintage military type clothing that can transition into the civilian world that doesn't scream military. Yeah. And I'm working with a woman right now where I'm going to have like a little, it's no big deal. We're just going to make a few of these items, but it's like a clothing line, workwear.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Based on like 1930s, 1940s stuff. So that's happening. I'm looking at the leather craft, obviously my woodworking. I'll collect vintage tools, the bicycle stuff. You might be able to see there's a bike hanging here. This is a clunker that I built years ago that it's probably about a 1948 frame that had a bunch of work done, and then all the parts off of late 70s or very early 80s, really mid 80s, early 80s mountain bikes start happening. So there's some of that technology on there. That bike got stolen. And it's a funny story. I was riding bikes with a bunch of guys and which is another hobby. Getting on these cruisers and going to the beach, riding up and down the coast. It's a great thing to do. I was riding with these guys, and it was the first time I ever rode with them. And when we got back, my van was gone. My van got stolen, and that bike was in it. Years later, I would post a picture of that from time to time because I just believed that if anybody ever stumbled upon that bike, they wouldn't just part it out. So it's a work of art. And if you're looking at it and you really start studying it, you're like, oh, that's a badass bike. One of the guys I had ridden with bought the bike for like $85 off of OfferUp. Somebody had spray bombed it black. He didn't know it was my bike. And he had it for years in his garage. And I posted up the picture of it saying, hey, this thing could still be out there. And next thing you know, I get an email from, dude, I think I got your bike. And then it turns out one of our mutual friends saw it, called him up, said, dude, you got Mike's bike in your garage. And it worked out great. I wasn't tight friends with the guy, but I knew him. Like I said, we'd ridden together. And he gave me the bike back. Wouldn't take $85 from me or anything. Because, you might have had a bike stolen as a kid. A lot of us did.
I don't think so. We live out in the country, so.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, thanks.
Now, I watched one of your videos the other day. You were golfing, and I was thinking, who's holding the camera? But I guess you were there with your grandfather?
Yeah, it was my grandpa.
So is he the reason why I'm turning the tables on you? Is he the reason why you're into the older stuff, do you think?
More so probably just my dad, and that's what I grew up with. Like when I was a kid, we never watched any modern, like the earliest thing we would watch would be from the 60s. Like from the 70s on, we didn't watch any of that. So I think that's probably why I'm more into the old fashioned stuff.
Well, that's interesting. So that was purposeful through your parents.
I think it was more so this is what we like, and I was just there, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, but did you ever ask them that? You should ask them that.
I don't think so. I guess
that seems like that would have been like we're not exposing any new stuff because the new stuff is what we see has created the problem.
Maybe.
With society, if you'll allow me, I'll give you a quick example. When I was a kid going to school, and when I lived in Jersey, I lived in Patterson for a number of years, which is not a great place. It's like an armpit town, and there's a lot of crime there. And half the kids in my class lived in the projects, right? Black and Puerto Rican kids, that sort of thing. We all got along. But at that point in time, Ebonics didn't exist. Rap music didn't exist. None of it. So we all learned the same stuff. Mm-hmm. And we all learned to speak English properly, right? And all these things. But this culture thing that happened through rap and everything else. Now there's this fake, which is invented by white people to make a bunch of money. And it's pretty crazy. But I'm just saying, like, now there's like this fake culture that's part of that community that never existed before out of the blue. So your parents, by only exposing you to the early stuff, kept you away from being exposed to the nonsense. They did you a favor.
Yeah, I'm happy for it.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that you still also have to be aware of what's going on in the actual world, because you still have to interact with it.
Yeah,
like it's a problem for me because I was so busy working hard, just trying to survive the last 20, 30 years. I don't know about all that stuff. The beginnings of the technology and what people were doing, chat rooms and things. I wasn't part of that stuff. Yeah. I was living a life, man, outside doing stuff. So I have so you're might have a little bit of that too. Not knowing about basic culture stuff. Like there's so many references in normal conversation that even just movies that people reference because they're iconic that you might not have. I'm always blown away by that because I love movies and I love old movies. And I make these references that they used to be part of the lexicon as I came up, but with younger people today, they have no idea what you're talking about. So,
sometimes like with my friends, I'll say some like 1950s slang or something. And they're just like, what are you talking about? It's kind of fun.
I would love that. My dad's favorite was boss. He'd be like, "It's real boss man." He was trying to sound cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So let's see. Do you have a favorite song or a favorite type of music?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a rock and roll kid, man. I mean, but I like jazz. I like the early jazz. I like, blues. I like knowing the history. I like knowing the history of everything. As far as
Mhm.
that's one of my hobbies. So I like something. I would like to get to the roots of it. So I like the early blues where it morphed into rock and roll, and understanding that it was black music, Little Richard and all that stuff, and their influence on rock and roll with Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and all that. Like I love all that rockabilly, dirty rockabilly, like what they were really singing about.
Mhm.
Black music is dirty. I mean, they're just like singing about stuff that you wouldn't want to talk about on your channel. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
Whitey came along. They had to kind of clean that up a little bit so they could play it on the radio. So lyrics got changed and all that. So I love that, and I love knowing the history of it. And then I guess some of the progressive stuff, but the stuff that's out today where it's just like a da, 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 beat, and they're repeating one line 15 times over and over again. And, that to me, that's not music. That's just some weird brain thing. That scares me. And as far as favorite song, I do. Unfortunately, it's from a guy that is turned out to be not who we thought he was all these years, Bruce Springsteen. So he's from Jersey, and he just turns out he's like a far over to the one side there, and it's a problem. But he has this great song. It's called "It's Hard to Be a Saint in the City,"
Okay.
and that sums up like the way I lived my life when I was young, and I live in the city, and it is. It's hard to be a nice person all the time, and I try to be in a place where there's just so much crazy nonsense and people doing dumb things that sometimes you can't avoid, that you have to
Yeah,
deal with. So it's hard to be a saint in the city.
it is. My dad keeps telling me it's hard to fly like an eagle when you're surrounded by a bunch of turkeys.
Dude, that's awesome, dude. Put
Yeah.
that on a t-shirt.
Uh, Apparently it was on his mom's shirt, and that's why he says it. So,
Oh, that's great.
um, all right. What's your favorite vehicle?
Well, the one I have right now, the
Okay.
ultimate, the most badass Astro van on the planet, because it's lifted 4x4 and everything else. I think
Yeah.
it's cool. I think it's interesting. I mean, there's obviously so many cool freaking cars out there, man. I think you'd have to be at my age. I've been exposed to so many things, done so many things, been so many different vehicles. You'd have to almost pick it like, what's your favorite like Italian sports car, or what's your favorite British, or what's your favorite muscle car? Like you'd have to like start breaking it down like that because to pick one, it's tough. But I like my van, even though it's a
Yeah.
thing sometimes.
I figured you might say that.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to make sure you're not actively cooking something and
No, I'm not.
all
Have you
right.
seen me doing my cooking video? I sit right here on the cutting board and do my thing.
uh okay, how did you get into woodworking?
Well, I'll tell you something. It just happened. I mean, my grandmother was married 3 times, and her third husband is the only grandfather I ever knew, and he had a shop in the garage. So when I was very little, I'd be in there. He'd never talk to me, but he would allow me to stand to the side and watch what he was doing. Before that, or probably right when I was very young, I was probably 4 years old or something. They were building a house behind my dad's bakery at the Jersey Shore. I consider this my first paid woodworking gig or carpenter gig as a goof. I was annoying this old guy that was siding the house, pestering him with questions. And he took a magnet out of his pocket and handed it to me. And he asked me to walk around the house because beach sand. He said, find all the nails that he dropped. That was just to get me out of his hair. But I did it. And I came back with all these nails. And he looked at me kind of funny, and he took them and he gave me a $5 bill, which is outrageous to pay a kid that's maybe not even 5 years old yet. You know, think about that. I was already getting like double minimum wage at 5 years old, you know, and to this day, I still charge what I'm worth. I took that $5 and I went to the liquor store and we had these fake candy cigarettes when I was a kid. They looked like cigarettes, and they had two kinds. One was the powdered sugar ones, but the other ones were like a gum, and you push air through them and like a puff of powdered sugar would come out of them.
Okay.
And then you take the paper off and chew them up. So that's kind of how I got exposed to it. And then from 4th grade to 8th grade in Patterson, we had half the year you did shop, and half the year you had home ec. Although 8th grade, you got to choose. And I chose home ec because that's where the girls were and the food. And then in my family, because again, nobody had money really, if something had to get fixed, you learned how to do it. Well, I had an accident in my room once. My dad would always let me have the guns. We were avid hunters and all that. And so the guns were in my room, and I had moved my room up into the attic. And I don't know why. I was cleaning my room one day, and the shotgun was there on the rack. And I don't know why I did it, but with my thumb, I just squeezed the trigger. Well, there was a round in the chamber. It was dumb. It should have never happened. It was an accident, obviously. That shotgun went off right in my face. And the shotgun flew off the rack all the way across the room, landed on the bed, but it blew out a window pane in a window. And on the other side of that was the neighbor's house, but it was the brick chimney. So it didn't do any damage to anybody. It was okay. But my uncle came over and fixed that window pane. And I watched him. And like 3 weeks later, there was a broken pane of glass at my grandmother's house, and I was expected to go there and fix it because now I knew how to do it. So that's a long-winded way of answering your question. How did I get exposed to it? There were all these things that happened. You know, I kind of just fell into it.
Yeah, I like your answer. Long-winded answer is what I want.
Okay. Then you don't have to talk so much.
Yeah. I'm asking the questions here.
Ask me anything. I'm an open book.
So a few videos ago, you had a nativity scene. So I wanted to ask you what you think about Jesus.
I could talk for an hour on this. I love the guy, man. He was cool. But all right, I hope we could do this because I know you want to keep this clean and everything. And my take on this, and I don't want to give too much up because I'm going to be doing a video on this soon.
Well, then, yeah.
Yeah, but okay, so I'll give you the short, brief thing. But I see Jesus as a cool dude. The guy was a carpenter, man. I mean, he was hanging out with his bros, drinking wine, hanging out with streetwalkers, all that stuff. I mean, people don't think about it in those terms, right? And I see Jesus as the kind of guy that could see everything that was going on and wanted to speak the truth to people and wake people up and realize you don't have to be oppressed. You know, there's basic rules, be kind to one another, all that good stuff. So I think that's all great. You know, I believe in God and I believe in Jesus, but I'm not a religious guy.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of religion.
So
too much going on there.
So when you say you believe in God and Jesus, then would you say you believe the resurrection, for example?
I'm okay with it. I mean, I've looked at these things from every angle. Like I've looked at it from being a cynic. You know, I've looked at it from just wanting to have blind faith. I've tried to come up with a reason why that could happen in reality, you know, other than the mystical aspect of things. I'm not the type of person that, let's say I didn't believe it. Well, I'm not going to argue with people about it, and I'm not going to make people who believe in it feel bad if I think differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of crazy stories. If you go with what the Mormons say, like, then he came here. You know what I mean? And then if you look at what's going on in Mexico, they talk about, I think it was Quetzalcoatl, but there's this guy, with white beard came out of the ocean, you know, and taught them all this stuff. You know, what I'm really into is the ancient astronaut theory.
Okay. I don't think I've heard of that.
Right. So you ever watch Aliens? Oh, dude. it's the same story across the world on every continent, that beings came here, from the heavens and helped us out, created us and all of that. And I think Jesus is tied in with all that. And I think God is a term that we use so we know what we're talking about, but I don't think as humans we could fully comprehend what it is. But I like to think of it as like a universal love and knowledge that we can all tap into through meditation and all that, because it speaks to you. You can communicate with it. And I think there's more of that going on. I think it's big. I think it's a big thing. But I think that religion is a problem, in my opinion. I think because more people have died because of religious conflict than any other reason on the planet, as far as war goes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.